Welcome to the Michiana Hivecast, where wellness meets community and conscious living takes flight. I'm your host, Jamila Blue, and I am so glad you're here. This is your space to expand, evolve, and grow together. Each episode, we celebrate the heart of Michiana through real conversations with local practitioners, healers, creatives, and community builders who are lighting the way towards connection, balance, and transformation. Whether you're just beginning your journey or deep in your practice, you'll find inspiration, insight, and a sense of belonging right here in the Hive. At Conscious Michiana, we are all about uniting people, sharing resources, and co-creating a thriving, holistic community. So let's get buzzing, and thank you for being a part of this conscious collective. The Michiana Hivecast, buzzing with wellness, connection, and conscious living in Michiana. Expand, evolve, grow. Welcome to a special Movember edition of the Michiana Hivecast, where we explore wellness through the lens of community, consciousness, and connection. Today, I am joined by Prince Roc, a spiritual healer and professional cuddler, whose work challenges traditional ideas of masculinity and invites men into deeper healing through touch, presence, and emotional openness. In this conversation, we will dive into the heart of men's health, exploring how vulnerability, spiritual practice, and intentional connection can transform lives. So let's get into it. Welcome, Prince. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's a
So
beautiful
happy to
day.
have you. It
New
is
day, new
a
week.
beautiful fall day. The trees are like at the height of fall right now, I think. They're just
Mhm.
glorious. Yeah. Yeah. So I was thinking about you because I know how much of a proponent you are for men's health. And I really love what you do about, especially with your mission about being vulnerable and healthy and making those spiritual connections and honoring oneself in a very authentic way. And I thought that you would be really wonderful to be able to interview for this initiative because I know that this is something that you're passionate about. So I really appreciate you being with us today.
I appreciate you thinking about me. It is definitely a passionate subject, and it's always for something that I am living, but then as I am living it and seeing the impact on my own life, um, I want more. I want it to impact other people's lives too. And I look around and I see a struggling world, and I think that we can all do better.
Absolutely. We can all do better. So, speaking in general about men's health and wellness, what does men's health mean to you beyond the physical aspects?
Mm. I think in your introduction to me, you nailed some of it right on the head. Having for men having um, emotional vulnerability and a deep presence. I think that is something that we are really called to and is very much missing in our culture. I don't believe that men can do the job that we are meant to do until we can be fully present, both with our loved ones and our community around us and with ourselves.
Absolutely. That's spot on. I'm right there with you, Prince. So, why do you think emotional vulnerability is still a challenge for so many men?
Our culture teaches us the exact opposite from a very young age. Um, Men are taught to toughen up. It is seen as a feminine quality to feel feelings, even though arguably men have just as many feelings, if not more sometimes. But we're taught to shut them down. We're taught to turn them off. We are not taught to identify them. And as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that a lot of this is specific to men, and a lot of this is generic to our culture as well. I think many of us, by the way we are raised, whether we're male or female or no matter what we are We are not demonstrated proper connection to our emotions. We are not taught proper how to work through those emotions, how to feel those emotions, how to move through those emotions without reacting to them, without them grabbing the steering wheel. We're not. A perfect example is I grew up being scared of my own anger. Because in my perception, as soon as I let myself feel anger, it would grab the steering wheel and it would run away with me and I would do terrible things. And so I bottled it up and bottled it up and bottled it up until guess what happened? Exactly what I was afraid of.
Hmm.
um,
So, how do you personally care for your mental health and what practices do you recommend?
mm, that is a long question to answer in a short time. It has been a very long journey to get where I am today and to really find a place of balance. However, I think, but some of my core practices are, first of all, solitude. And this is coming from someone who, growing up, and well into my 20s, I was terrified of being alone. But I think that that comes back to that presence aspect. We cannot truly connect with ourselves and be present with ourselves until we're alone. And all of that noise around us dies down, the noise of other relationships, the noise of other voices, the noise of the world and culture around us. We can't hear ourselves until those noises are gone. So solitude has become a really core practice of mine. And
Mhm.
and in that space, I often find, emotions that I felt throughout the day or throughout the week drifting back up in a time and space and energy where I'm now able to process them, where I'm now able to maybe even realize the real feeling of what I was feeling in that moment. I knew I felt something, but I didn't know what it was. And now I can process what was I actually feeling in that time.
Mhm.
Movement. I think movement is incredibly important in my 10 plus years now of mental health exploration in my own personal journey. I have found that you cannot remove it from physical movement. Uh, you can have all the talk therapy in the world, you can have all the mental processing in the world, but until you move those emotions through your physical body, you are not truly going to release them. And that what kind of music movement that is doesn't necessarily matter. I even find the types of movement that I enjoy vary in season to season, or maybe even vary depending on what emotion I'm trying to process. But there needs to be some kind of physical movement. Um, and then also connecting with nature. It is our world is a million miles per hour, and and it is very easy to lose ourselves in this concrete jungle, to lose ourselves in culture and what we're supposed to do. And I think that getting out in nature enables us to reset to our true, primal, deepest humanity.
So it sounds like a beautiful three-tiered system right there. Quiet, nature, move. So let's go out and be quiet or nature and dance or move in whatever way that works. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, that's something that we can all do, not just specific for men, but everybody can do that. However, with men specifically, it might be a little harder to get there for whatever reason. Well, some of the reasons that you had mentioned, I believe. So, what role does touch play in healing, especially for men who may not receive it often?
Mm. I mean, first of all, just from a very basic biological level, there are hormones that are released through touch, oxytocin, and those that is a system that has started at birth, even before birth, when when we are in our mom's belly. Some of her hormones get through to us, and then as a baby, that basic touch is designed to regulate our nervous systems. When in a place where we're growing and there's not a whole lot there in our brains yet, as all those neural pathways are just beginning to form, touch has a very real biological response that affects the way our body develops, that affects the way our brain develops, that affects everything. And that is really crucial in those first few years of our lives, and none of us get to control that. And so, very often in that most crucial time of our lives, we do not receive what we need. And it does affect the growth of our brain and our neural pathways. And even though we can't control that, I do believe that then as adults, it becomes our responsibility to go back and reclaim what was meant to be ours.
Hmm.
And it is a difficult and challenging and not a short process. However, it can be done. You can regrow neural pathways. You can change how your brain is formed. And I think that that is crucial when we are talking about mental and emotional health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How do you see the connection between spiritual healing and physical wellness?
Mm. In Western culture, we divide health. We divide our physical health from our mental health, and our mental health from our emotional health. And we, even within the own body, we go to different doctors for every different part of our body. In my experience, they cannot be separated. And even in much of the world, it is recognized that the health of one part of us cannot be separated from the other parts of us. The physical, the mental, the emotional, the sexual, the spiritual are all deeply intertwined. And you can make progress only addressing one of those, but you will never break through to your full potential until you combine all of them and recognize yourself as a whole and complete being with parts that interlock and feed off of each other.
Hmm. I love how you explained that. Can you share how you became a professional cuddler and what inspired that path?
Mm. Um, I'm going to take this path further back. So growing up, I did not have very much physical touch. I had hardly any in growing up in a cold German family.
Mm.
And then when I was about 15, I met a group of friends who was very physically affectionate in a completely innocent way. And we spent many of our weekends in cuddle puddles and um, getting this touch. And I quickly realized that physical touch was one of my primary love languages. And it quickly brought in nervous system regulation and comfort and a feeling of safety that I had never felt my entire life. So I really nosedived deep into it. Um, and then, lost that group of friends when I moved away from home and didn't really have that again for a while. But probably again in my mid 20s, when I had my mental breakdown, I again recognized the need for this deep need for physical touch, um, largely just for like I said, regulation and safety. Um, and so that opened me up to my own need for it. And then it wasn't until I was 30 or 31, and one of my partners was a professional cuddler, and I just kept hearing about it and hearing about it and hearing about it, and not just hearing about it from the cuddler's perspective, but also reading. She would send me like reviews that people made of her, of their experiences with her, and I was deeply moved by it. And over the course of a couple of years, I gradually came to this place where I was like, why am I not doing this? It is something that is so important to me, and it is something that I am good at. Um, Energetically, many people naturally feel very safe and mellow in my presence. So why am I not pursuing this? And I decided to just go for it.
A beautiful story. Thank you. What are some common misconceptions people have about professional cuddling?
I think, well, first of all, again, in our culture, as much as we divide things, one area that we do not divide is we have this really unhealthy relationship with touch, where many of us are held at a distance from it. It is, especially among men, it is often seen as weakness to need it. Um, and as a culture, we are often only allowed certain amounts of touch before it's seen as too much, particularly outside of our families. Um, and so we get into this place where we have this deep driving need for touch, but we're denying that need. And so it turns into a sexual need. Again, everything is interlocked, the physical and the sexual and everything else. And so we combine those needs, not realizing that they are two different things. The need for a basic platonic regulatory physical touch is not the same as the need for a sexual touch. But we're so distanced from and confused by these needs that we have combined them. And so a lot of people, one of the first questions I get was like, how do you not get a boner? How do you not get sexually turned on when you're cuddling with women and everything? And I'm like, because I am not in that space. That is not what we are there for. Um, and and that being said, sometimes bodies do have natural responses, but those responses don't have to control us. We are in control. Our self control, our mind is regulating our experiences, and so if our bodies have a natural reaction that is not in line with the experience that we have signed up for, we can choose different actions. And that is very common, especially amongst people who maybe are not getting nearly enough touch in their lives. As soon as they do get touched, their body is like, this is sexual, but it doesn't have to be. We don't have to let that feeling take the steering wheel, and we can steer the experience a different direction.
Absolutely. How do men typically respond to the idea of platonic touch therapy?
Mm. Uh, Most of them are pretty shut down to it. Um, and that is very much a thing in our culture. I found in traveling the world that in many other cultures, men are actually very physically affectionate with each other. Straight men are very physically affectionate with each other, sometimes even more affectionate with each other than they are publicly with their women, with their partners.
Mm.
And so it is definitely a thing of our culture, but men are, again, we are taught in our culture that physical needs are weakness, or if they are between men, that they are gay, and that is seen as a derogatory thing. And we're almost in this place of we are afraid of being any less of a man. So to be seen as anything that could possibly present as feminine or as gay makes us less of a man, which I think is a huge error that has really steered um, masculinity wrong in this country.
hmm Absolutely. Have you noticed any shifts in how men approach intimacy and connection in recent years?
I think to some degree it is tough to. There are more men who are open to it. I do think that that is true. I think that has kind of come with a upsurgence of mental health being more on the forefront of people's minds, of conversations. It's being normalized in many ways. And so, growing up, I was taught that mental health is you're either normal and you're fine, or you're crazy, and those are the only two possibilities. And I think in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, we've really seen a turnaround of that, and it's become more normalized, and we're all realizing that this is something we all deal with.
hmm Yeah. What does healthy masculinity look like to you?
Mm, that is a deep question. I think, first of all, it is recognizing that I am a man. Therefore, everything that I do, everything that I feel is masculine. I think that is a really important piece that men in our culture are missing today. We are chasing masculinity instead of being masculinity.
Mm. Hmm.
Uh, and I think also there's pieces of presence. I believe that men are meant to be pillar stones for everything else to hang off of, immovable. But that doesn't mean unfeeling. That means centered and grounded within ourselves so that it doesn't matter what emotions come against us. It doesn't matter what changes come against us. We are the same because we know who we are. And we know that we are powerful, and therefore we don't have to react to the things coming against us, to the things happening around us. We are able to absorb them. We are able to let them pass through us. We are able to defend against them without them changing us. Um, and then there's also a piece of protection. One of the biggest things that I see in our culture, I mean, we are still currently in Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and something that we see constantly is men physically, mentally, emotionally abusing the same people that we are meant most deeply to protect. And I think that that is a wire crossed in masculinity within our culture. Um, so there is a piece of we are the protector, but I think too often these days what we need to protect our loved ones from is our own reactions. And again, coming back to that place of being deeply centered within ourselves, being immovable within ourselves, um, having a support system so that the emotions and the reactions that we do have that are very real, that are very human, don't grab the steering wheel and control the direction we are going.
Hmm.
One of the biggest things that we have focused on in this culture is men as providers, which I think is a deeply ingrained core piece that is very real. Um, we are meant to be providers for our families. But what I think we miss is we stop at the physically providing. I go to work, I provide the money, I fix the things around the house. My job as a provider is done. And I think that that is actually only the beginning. I think it is deeply important and crucial that we are emotional providers for our loved ones, that we are um, touch providers for our loved ones. Again, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, we need to hit every single one of those areas as providers.
Well said. How do you integrate spiritual healing into your work with clients?
Mm. A lot of it actually comes pretty simply. Again, we like to separate the spiritual and the physical and the mental, and it's all the same thing. So I find that some of the best ways to connect with ourselves spiritually are actually through physical practices. Breath work is very important and is something that touches every area of our lives. Um, Physical ritual is another thing that I practice a lot of. It gives us a tangible way of connecting with the spiritual, and it often maybe especially in this country, maybe not, but the spiritual is seen as this ethereal thing that you can't touch and you can't see and you can't explain, and only the priest or the pastor is really only even able to conceptualize. We don't actually know what it is. But I think that the spiritual is all around us. and it is deeply a part of us. It is, um, and so having physical practices to connect us with our spirituality can be a really good rooting point. In the same note, connecting with nature, I think, is also deeply spiritual.
Mm. What are some spiritual practices that have helped you or your male clients reconnect with themselves?
Hmm. I think one of the biggest is meditation. And I say that it feels like a loaded word because I feel like whenever I say meditation, people imagine something that it's not. I feel like when I say meditation, people imagine me sitting there perfectly still, um, disconnected from the world, drifting in my mind, um, and not feeling or thinking anything, and I'm just existing in this perfect nirvana state. And that is very rarely true. Every once in a while. But most often, to me, meditation is listening. Mostly listening to my own body, listening to my own thoughts, my feelings, and simply being present with them. So very often when I'm meditating, I'm thinking, man, my back really hurts right now. Wow, my joints are tight. Um, and I'm having emotions and thoughts coming up, thoughts about work. Oh, shoot, I didn't write this thing down. And oh, I need to do this for my daughter tomorrow. And, there is thoughts, there is feelings, there is physical sensations. And it's simply being present with all of those while also not grabbing onto them. If each one of those feelings and emotions and thoughts is a is a squirrel running by, I'm not watching that. I'm not fixated on that squirrel. I'm not my attention isn't consumed by that squirrel. I'm allowing the squirrel to run by me, and I'm noticing his presence, and then he's gone. And I'm allowing that presence to come and to go and to flow through me. And another, again, we come back to breath work. Another deep part of meditation is that breath work, and is also imagination. So breath work, your brain is like a monkey, and or you could a monkey or a 3-year-old, and if you say, "Don't do this," what is that monkey or a 3-year-old going to do? Exactly what you told them not to do. So instead, you got to treat your monkey mind, your 3-year-old mind, like a monkey or a 3-year-old, and instead say, "I have a very important job for you. Your job is to breathe, and not just to breathe, but breathe in this precise manner." And I find that as I do that, everything slows down.
Hmm.
Now those racing thoughts, I can find a purchase on them. Now I can allow them to pass through me because they're not running away from me. I'm not hooked up to that donkey cart and it's going wherever it wants to go. I I am now sitting here grounded in myself, allowing things to pass by and through me.
Hmm.
Um, so a lot of people try to empty their minds, or they imagine that they're supposed to empty their minds and think absolutely nothing. Whereas I feel like some of my best meditations are actually when I allow my imagination to light up. And I imagine things going through me physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. One of my favorite practices is to imagine myself as a tree and imagine my energy reaching down deep into the earth. And I find that to be a very grounding practice. Imagining my energy reaching way up into the skies, up to the stars. And I use these many different visualizations. And ultimately, I don't think it matters what you are visualizing, but using specific visualization practices. When I say specific, I mean the same one over and over and over and over, and allowing yourself to ground through your imagination and through a full mental experience instead of an empty one.
Hmm.
Um, hmm,
What are some spiritual practices that have helped you and your male clients reconnect to themselves?
yeah. Um, Another practice that I like to do, so I've mentioned nature several times. Um, Going out into nature really allows us to see ourselves as a part of a greater whole. And so simply a walk through nature can allow us to experience some of that. One of my favorite practices is actually to go off trail and to follow animal trails, and that follow their signs, follow their tracks, find their homes. And I find that that helps me to connect with that more primal nature within myself. And another practice that I like to do in nature is to make altars, for lack of a
Mm,
better word. Um, Finding and noticing things in nature that correspond with that season. Uh, just little, as I'm walking, I'm constantly looking around and looking for treasures, looking for unique things, looking for beautiful things. And I'll pick them up on my walk and then get to a certain point in my walk. And maybe I find a log laying down or a little crevice in the bottom of a trunk, and I will arrange those things. And I call it an altar. But really what it is a noticing, it is a presence, it is a focusing. And it's all done with something that connects me with a bigger whole and helps me to remember my place in the world.
mm. It's beautiful. How do you help men navigate trauma or emotional blockages through your healing work?
Mm. First is giving them a safe container. As as men, we are constantly guarded and shielded, and we can't reach those healing places until we are first vulnerable. And a privilege that we very seldom get as men is someone else holding that space for us. We are very often to hold that in a position to hold that space for everyone around us constantly all the time, and we don't find that rest. We don't find that safety where we just get to let go. Um, so giving them that safe container. Um, a deeper piece of that is also learning how to provide that safe container for yourself. Um, One of my biggest mental health practices was realizing that there is different mental states living within me. Our brains grow and they age and they develop with time, but the old pieces of us never disappear. So I am a 36-year-old man, and that 5-year-old boy is also still inside of me. It's still shaped in within my brain, shaped within my neural pathways, um, and ultimately, way more often than we are willing to recognize, that innermost 5-year-old is actually the one calling the shots, is actually the one holding the steering wheel and determining our actions and our reactions. Um, so by separating out those parts of myself, I am able to take my 36-year-old man and have him hold space for the 5-year-old, for the 10-year-old, for the 15-year-old. When the 5-year-old feels unsafe, when the 10-year-old feels unsure, when the 15-year-old feels angry, my man is able to come in and hold that space for them. And so I am still able to be vulnerable and to feel and process all of those feelings without denying them and shutting them down, but then also say, I feel you, I see you, I recognize you, but you're not holding the steering wheel today. I am. And I can provide this safe bubble for you to feel all of those things um, and not react to them
Hmm.
because I have you.
Hmm. One of my favorite things about working with my parts, I love parts work. It's one of my favorite tools. And one of my favorite things is when connecting with those very young parts is being able to let them know how to be able to work with them in a way that when I was 5, I didn't have me, the adult me, to be able to comfort the 5-year-old me the way that I needed to be comforted then. So to be able to give that part the attention, and taking care of those needs. And a lot of times, those old parts, those very young parts, um, they're caught in this loop. They don't recognize that there's an older version of us. They're just caught in the loop, and they come up to the surface. And until we begin to recognize what parts are what within us, we're just being bumped around all over the place by our parts until we can do what you said, which is, hey, there, young part, I've got this. You can trust that I've got this. I've gone through this song and dance before. I know what I'm doing, and I've got you, and we're safe. We're good. And it's made such a huge difference, um, in working with in my own spiritual development. And I've just seen how beneficial it is to so many people that not only I've worked with, but to see and witness through others who have done parts work. It's just, I love that you're on the parts work path as well, because it's so powerful, so powerful. What advice would you give to men who feel disconnected from their emotions or purpose?
Mm. It's time to reconnect with yourself. And again, circling right back to the first question I answered, some of the best ways to do that are solitude and nature.
Hmm. And movement. I remember you saying
Yeah,
as
the
well.
movement. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
allowing yourself to feel yourself, to be yourself. But it does take intentional vulnerability. Um, we we don't get to move those things through those things until we are first vulnerable.
Hmm. And that's so scary. Being vulnerable is scary. It takes courage, a lot of courage to be vulnerable.
Yeah. And guess what? We are big, strong men, and we can do lots of scary things.
Indeed. Indeed.
Masculinity across the years has done incredibly scary things. And we are still capable of that. We are capable of doing the most scary things. And if we can, we're already doing parts of it. And if we can do those parts, that means we can do the other parts too. If we can do the physically scary parts and face them, we can face the emotionally scary parts too.
Hmm. Why is the Movember initiative important to you personally or professionally?
Mm. So I have mentioned in this interview my own journey of mental health. I lived in denial until my mid 20s. I went through intense trauma as a child and blocked out most of it. And actually, even just in the last few months, continued to become more and more aware of what truly happened in my childhood that I blocked out, that I was unaware of, and is the reason for all this trauma. But I found myself in my mid 20s, um, lashing out and full of reactions that I had no idea where they were coming from. And I started to seek help, but it continued to get worse until when I was 26, a couple of days after Christmas, I had a complete mental breakdown and my mind shattered into a million pieces. And it took me years to pick those pieces back up. Um, but but in that time, even as I told myself, I don't think I'm ever getting out of this, I said, if I get out of this, I will also help other people get out of it. And part of that was going to therapists, and I would sit down with a therapist and I could immediately recognize if they were a therapist who had been trained in a classroom to be a therapist, or if they were a therapist who had first experienced these things for themselves. And one of them was able to help me, and the other one was not ever. And so I realized that by living through these experiences myself, it almost became my responsibility to pass on the full experience that I had, the full healing journey that I had, so that other people can experience it too. Because no amount of, if you haven't lived through it, it doesn't matter what you study, what you're taught. If you haven't lived through it, you are never going to understand it. And so it becomes the responsibility of those of us who have lived through it to help others also live through it. Um, and then I think, especially with, November, with it being November, and my mental breakdown was a few days after Christmas, and so thinking back to my mental breakdown, November was such an intense month. There was so much um, stress and anger and breaking emotions. And the flood hadn't quite broken the dam yet, but it was darn close. And so that makes it hit even closer to home.
Well, I'm so glad that you are on the other side of that and where you are today, for sure. What message would you share with men who are hesitant to seek help or support?
Mm. Men are strong. We're not strong enough. I don't care who you are. None of us are strong enough on our own. And it is crucial that we are protectors, not just of our families, of our loved ones, but also of ourselves and each other. And I think masculinity's real strength is not found within us as individuals, but found within us as a whole.
Mm,
Masculinity's, I mean, look across history at what masculinity has been able to accomplish as a single man versus as an empire. One man is only able to do one man's work, but as a community, as a whole, we can accomplish things that are far beyond what we are capable of alone.
absolutely. How can communities better support men's mental and emotional health?
Mm. I think, first of all, just by being aware of it, um, being aware of the intense, crippling level of mental and emotional strain that men experience on a day-to-day basis. And I don't say that to diminish anything that women or anyone else is experiencing, but I think it is important to stop and recognize that men often feel like they are holding the whole world up by themselves. And they're cracking underneath that strain. Um, I think giving space to listen to men and in a deeper way. And I do think that men are slower to respond to those inquiries for a few reasons. I think women are much more in touch with their emotions, and so you ask them their emotions, and they're able to rattle them off. For us men, we're often disconnected from those emotions, and so it takes time to sort through the pieces. And also, I think that we experience emotion slower. So so to connect emotionally with a man, you have to have a slower experience. Um, you have to sit around a fire and have spaces of silence in between. It might take them 5 or 10 minutes to come out with one sentence. It's not immediately there on their tongues. Um, and even, I mean, even just giving space for a man to feel seen, even if he doesn't respond verbally, is huge.
Mm. I've got one last question for you, Prince. If you could reimagine the way society supports men, what would that look like?
Hmm. As you're finishing your last question, I realized there was one more piece, and it fits perfectly well into this piece as well. I think for men, being seen and appreciated is huge. I've very much felt that within myself. Um, Sometimes the one of the easiest ways to support them is just recognize and verbally appreciate what they are doing, what they have done. But imagining a supportive society, I imagine a society that doesn't force masculinity to look a certain way, that allows masculinity to have 100 different faces, 1,000 different faces, as each man presents masculinity in his own unique way. I imagine a society where men support each other and hold space for each other, and a society where men are allowed to show weakness and still be seen as men. To realize that the true strength is not in never being weak. The true strength is in being full of weakness, but being strong enough to get up again and again and again anyway.
Beautiful. Prince, is there anything that I've not asked you that you would like to add?
I feel complete.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today and this interview. I truly appreciate you and all of the work that you've done, not only on yourself, but what you bring to our collective each and every day. Thank you, Prince.
You're welcome, Jamila, and you as well. I see all of your intense effort and your drive to connect with the community, and I honor it.
Thank you. That is a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us in the Hive. We hope you're walking away inspired, energized, and ready to expand, evolve, and grow on your own journey. If this conversation moved you, sparked a new idea, or made you feel more connected, share it with a friend and help us keep the buzz alive. Conscious Michiana is a nonprofit powered by community, and your support helps us keep creating meaningful content, hosting events, and connecting people to the resources they need to thrive. Visit consciousmichiana.org/donate to contribute, because every drop of honey helps. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected with us on social media. Until next time, be well, Michiana. The Michiana Hivecast, buzzing with wellness, connection, and conscious living in Michiana. Expand, evolve, grow.